Hey everyone, welcome back. You know how much we love to get into the nitty-gritty here on the deep dive. So today, we're tackling a question that I think a lot of us have probably thought about
Yeah.
at some point, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
does having kids, does it actually make you happier?
It's a big one.
It's a huge question. And look, we're not going to have a definitive answer for you today, but we're going to
No.
dive deep, literally, into some fascinating research on this topic. We're looking at an excerpt from an article titled, "Does Having Children Actually Make You Happy?" A neuroscientist explains.
Ooh, I like it.
So we're going to the source, all right? We're getting into the brain science behind parenting and kind of unpacking what this article reveals about, like, the emotional roller coaster of it all, you know?
Yeah, it's fascinating, the brain on babies.
Oh, and get this. We'll even touch on why, like, that baby smell is so captivating
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
from, like, a neurological perspective.
The brain is amazing. It has so much to tell us about the whole parenting experience.
Okay, so this article, right off the bat, it talks about oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, like that surge that especially mothers experience during birth and breastfeeding.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Could you kind of break down for us, why is this hormone so crucial in this whole equation?
Well, oxytocin, I like to think of it as like this superpower for connection. Like it ramps up our emotional bonds, right? And it basically makes those close interactions even more pleasurable.
Okay.
So when a mother gives birth or when she's breastfeeding, she gets this massive influx of oxytocin. It's like it basically supercharges that bond between her and the baby, making it like insanely powerful.
Right. It's like it's almost hardwired.
Yeah, almost like a biological, I don't know, addiction to love, you know?
Yeah, it's
It's
interesting.
incredible.
And, it makes me think of, like, when you hear new parents describe their feelings, it's often like this overwhelming, almost primal kind of love.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
it makes sense now that I'm hearing you explain the oxytocin piece of it. But here's the thing. It's not just moms, right?
Right.
The article talks about how everyone's brain, like we're all kind of wired to respond positively to babies.
We are hardwired to love those little faces.
So why is that?
I mean, think about it. Babies have this like unique power to just like trigger these specific responses in our brains, even if we're not, the
Right.
parents.
Even if you're not like biologically connected.
Exactly. It's like built into us as humans.
Like what is it about babies that does that to our brains?
Well, it's a whole bunch of things, actually. Like their scent, babies have this incredible smell that just draws you in. And then there are their facial features, those big eyes, the chubby cheeks, the little button nose.
Right.
It's like they're designed to melt our hearts. And then there's the vulnerability, right? They're so tiny and helpless, and that just like instinctively makes us want to protect them.
Right.
And even their size, they're just so small and delicate. It's like our brains are just wired to respond to that with like care and affection.
It's so interesting because, thinking about it, it explains why we find so many other things cute too, right? Like puppies, kittens, they all share those same kind of babyish features.
Exactly. Those big eyes, that soft fur, the playful clumsiness, it all kind of triggers those same feelings of like, oh, I just want to take care of you.
Right. That nurturing instinct that's like built in.
Exactly. And this is something the article brings up, this initial like euphoria, this baby love, it doesn't last forever, right? Like
No.
reality sets in.
Right, right.
The realities of parenting.
It's not all, cute baby smells and snuggles.
Wow.
It's sleepless nights,
Oh, the sleepless
the
night.
constant demands, you're giving up a certain amount of freedom.
Absolutely.
So it's not all sunshine and roses, is it?
It's not always picture perfect. That's for sure.
And I think that's a really important point to acknowledge because,
Yes.
so much of what we see, especially on social media, it's this like curated version of parenthood.
Exactly. And that can be so misleading
It can.
because it sets up this unrealistic expectation of what it's really like.
Right.
And then when people actually become parents and they start experiencing those, sleepless nights, the tantrums, the constant demands, they can feel like they're failing somehow.
They feel like they're doing something wrong.
Exactly. Like, why am I not feeling this blissful joy all the time? But the truth is, those challenging moments, they're just part of the journey.
They're a part of it, yeah.
And it's important to remember that, like, those stressors, they actually trigger your brain's stress response system.
Okay, how so?
Well, the amygdala, it's like the fear center of your brain.
Right.
And guess what? It can become super active during those tough parenting moments, leading to like higher anxiety
Oh,
levels.
wow.
Yeah. And, another thing is when you're sleep deprived, which,
Right.
let's face it, most new parents are.
Pretty much.
Your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for like decision making and emotional regulation.
Okay.
It doesn't function as well.
So you're not at your best.
You're not at your best. So, you might find yourself snapping at your kids more easily or just feeling overwhelmed by like even small things.
And that just adds to the stress.
Exactly. So it's important to acknowledge those feelings, to be kind to yourself, and to realize that you're not alone.
Right. You're not alone.
Most parents go through these ups and downs, and it's totally normal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay, if it's not, constant bliss, if it's not this like picture perfect joyride, then where does happiness actually fit into all of this?
Right.
Because the article concludes that having kids doesn't necessarily guarantee happiness,
It doesn't.
but it does something else, right? It intensifies all emotional experiences.
That's the key. It's not about just like adding happiness on top of your existing life. It's like taking your whole emotional range and just like cranking up the volume.
Okay, so it's like amplified.
Exactly. Like the highs, the joys, those moments of connection with your child, they become even more incredible. Like watching them hit those milestones, sharing those fun experiences together, feeling that overwhelming love.
Right.
Those are amplified. But on the flip side, the stress, the exhaustion, the worry,
Those are amplified too.
those get turned up as well. So it's like this trade-off.
It is, yeah.
Would you rather have like this steady level of contentment, or are you willing to experience these like potentially much higher highs, but also possibly lower lows?
It's like, would you trade like steady contentment for the possibility
With
of
those peaks and valleys?
more intense, like peaks and valleys?
Exactly.
And that's such a personal decision.
It really is. And that's what this article really gets us thinking about, right? It's like, what truly matters to us in life? Do these like potentially amplified emotions, both good and bad, do they align with our personal goals for happiness?
Such a good question.
And it's interesting because the article doesn't really go into like coping strategies for those amplified lows.
Right, right.
But, I wonder, do you think things like mindfulness practices
Oh, interesting.
or finding like supportive communities, could those be helpful in kind of navigating those more difficult emotions?
I think so.
I think that having that support system in place and having those tools to manage stress can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. Well, I think what we've learned today, or at least what we've kind of unpacked, is that
Yeah.
having children, it's not this magical formula for happiness.
It's not a guarantee, that's for sure.
No, it's way more complex than that.
Much more nuanced.
It's this like interplay of brain chemistry, of societal expectation, and of personal choices, right?
Absolutely. It's all those things woven together.
And, to your point about the article not going into the coping mechanisms, it's almost like we're kind of led to think that,
Yeah.
okay, if you are going to, make this choice, if you are going to become a parent,
Right.
it's important to also be thinking about, okay, how am I going to equip myself to deal with
The challenge.
those more difficult moments? Because they will come.
Oh, they will come. They're inevitable. But, the beautiful thing is, even with those challenges, there's so much joy and love to be found in parenthood.
Absolutely. It's like it's such a multifaceted experience.
It is. It's a tapestry of emotions,
Yeah,
really.
that's a great way to put it.
And as you're, thinking about this question, I really encourage you to look beyond those societal pressures, the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, and just like really connect with your own desires. Ask yourself, what kind of life do I want to create? Does parenthood authentically fit into that vision? That's the real question to grapple with.
That's the question to ask yourself. So thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today.
Of course, my pleasure.
This has been an amazing conversation. And to all of you listening, we would love to hear your thoughts on this. What resonated with you? What are your own experiences? Head over to our social media and share your perspectives. Until next time, keep diving deep.
Keep exploring.